Hey guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Watches TV, where I watch all the television shows, and then I come over here and I react to them. And I watch a lot of true crime shows. I love true crime documentary series. And in the last year, every true crime series that I have watched, or every true crime show that I have watched, any documentary, I have followed it up by doing well, not everyone, but most of them, I have come over here and I have done a reaction to them. I think there's actually, some of the older ones that I went back and I watched, like the Jenks, and then I watched the Jenks 2. I still have not made reactions to that, so I probably have like 5 or 6 that I watched that I didn't make reactions to. If you guys want me to do that, I can do that in the comment section below. If you have recommendations for true crime documentaries that you guys would like me to watch, let me know. Put it in the comment section below, and I will watch it, and I will come over here, and I will react to it. Today, I want to talk about an episode from a show that I just talked about the other day. So, the other day, I did a reaction to the show Murder Under the Friday Night Lights, and it's a series where every episode is completely different. They're currently on the 4th season. The 4th season, they're releasing an episode a week. I believe the episodes come out on Thursdays or Fridays. And it's on HBO Max, called Murder Under the Friday Night Lights. I just did my coverage of this. I think it was last week sometime I did it. And I talked about how it's interesting because it's not typically a show that I would watch. It has to do with football. And every episode is a true crime story that has something to do with the world of football and Friday Night Lights. If you watch any of my other channels, of which I have 7, I am not a sports follower by any means. Incidentally, and I said in that video, that I am very, very interested in movies that have to do with football and basketball. I loved Hoop Dreams, the documentary. And so several years ago, I was listening to this podcast, and the podcast was called Tom Brown's Body. And it was about a football player. I believe he was a manager of the team of this high school football team in Texas, and he went missing. His name was Tom Brown. And so I listened to this podcast about it. And then, I think it was like a year later, somebody commented on one of my videos. I was talking about that podcast, and I think it was on my vlog, because I vlog every single day, and I talk about what podcasts I'm listening to, audiobooks, shows I'm watching, stuff like that. And somebody reached out to me and said, the podcast that you were listening to about Tom Brown is the 2nd episode on the 1st season of the show called Murder Under the Friday Night Lights. So I was real intrigued. I was like, what is this about? So I went and I looked on HBO Max and found this show called Murder Under the Friday Night Lights. And because I'm not that interested in sports, at first I was kind of like, oh, I don't think I'm really about this show. But I did watch the episode about Tom Brown, and it was very, very well done. It was, they interviewed all kinds of people. They interviewed the past sheriff, they interviewed his mother, they interviewed siblings, they interviewed friends, they interviewed people that were there that night. It was very, very, very well done, and I just was completely taken. And so I went back, and that was the 2nd episode, and I went back and I watched the 1st episode, and then I just binge-watched the 1st season, and then after that, I watched the 2nd season. I think I watched the 3rd season in real time last year, and now I'm currently watching the 4th season. So when I did this video last week, I just kind of wanted to bring some attention to the show for people that like true crime, because I am not somebody that likes to watch true crime series that every episode is a different story. There's only one other documentary or true crime series that I like that, and it's called Murder in the Heartland. And each episode is about some small town murder that takes place at most of them we've never heard of before. That's very much kind of like what Murder Under the Friday Night Lights is, but all of them have something to do with football, cheerleaders, Friday Night Lights, things like that, and typically high school football. And so I went in and I started watching it, and what was interesting was all the stories had some tie to high school football, or that they were players from high school football teams that went on to play for the NFL, or it was just something to do with their family. That was just one component of it. Most of them, that wasn't exclusively about them being football players or anything. So when I did the video last week, I just kind of wanted to bring some attention to it, because I'm somebody that loves to watch the true crime series like Making a Murderer, The Keepers, The Staircase. I love, true crime documentary series where it's 5 or 6 episodes in a row, and then, it's you get to get really into the story. I also love podcasts like that. I'm not really a true crime podcast listener where each episode is a different story. There's only been a few through the years I've listened to, like My Favorite Murder. They do a different, every week is a different story, but very few do I really like it. I like it when you can really get into a story, you know, and watch it all the way through. So I wanted to bring some attention to this for people that are like me that like to get into a story, because each of the stories on Murder on the Friday Night Lights, it's conclusive. It starts by telling you what happened. It introduces you to the players, to the people that are in it. It does a very good job. This is one of the things I think is really important in honoring the victim. I think that each of the stories paint a very eloquent picture of the victim and pay homage to the victim. And not just by what they say, but through the family members, through the friends that tell the story and share who they were. You get to really know who the person was, who the victim was, through the eyes of the people that loved them. And I think that that's important in any telling of true crime, that it's not just about the killer or the murderer. I think sometimes those of us that watch a lot of true crime get kind of like into like the whole mystery of all of that, which is the interest part of it, right? But at the same time, I think it's really important to honor the victim. And so this week's episode was called, and it was actually a story that I knew nothing about, and I was talking about it on my vlog, and 2 people direct messaged me, and one person commented on my video and said that they watched this case happen in real time, which was interesting because I had never heard of this case. But the case does talk a lot about social media, and so while I'm watching it, I thought, I bet you anything there were like true crime YouTubers that were following this. I mean, it was a pretty big case on a national level. So I have to believe that this was followed really closely. And to watch it and not know anything about it, this episode, I thought it was fantastically done. I felt so bad for, obviously for the victim, but for the families, the friends, it was such a tragic story. And so I wanted to talk about it this week. I don't know that I'm going to cover every episode of Murder on the Friday Night Lights. I probably won't. But this one specifically, I wanted to talk about. And the episode is, it's season 4, episode 3, and it's called Monster Among Trolls. And the story says it's about Tristyn Bailey, who is a 13-year-old girl that was murdered. I think she was 13, maybe she was 12. Middle school cheer captain Tristyn Bailey is the future of Friday Night Lights at Creekside High. Police investigating her disappearance have to navigate teenage rumors and gossip in their small Florida town to identify a monster in their midst. So I want to go in really quick, and I want to read the Wikipedia page in case you know nothing about this case, and then I'll get into kind of what I thought about this episode. So when you go underneath here, it says, hold on a second, background. Tristyn Bailey was born in Singapore on January 18, 2008 to Forrest and Stacey Bailey. She was the youngest of 5 children. Tristyn spent her first 4 years in Singapore. Family and friends describe her as an energetic young girl who always stood up for her friends. Her mother said she was just a powerful child that was able to give a lot to so many. Tristyn grew up and lived in St. Johns County, Florida. She was in 7th grade at Patriot Oaks Academy, where she stood out as a popular student and cheerleader. And then when you go underneath here for the whole idea of the story, it says the murder of Tristyn Bailey took place on May 9th, 2021 on Mother's Day in St. Johns County, Florida, United States. Bailey, a 13-year-old middle schooler and cheerleader, was murdered by Aiden Fucci, born November 6, 2006, a 14-year-old schoolmate. Bailey was reported missing by her family that morning. Bailey's body was found later that day by a resident in a wooded area near St. John's. Her body had 114 stab wounds. A residential surveillance camera recorded Bailey walking around at 1:45 a.m. with Fucci. A later recording showed Fucci running alone with his shoes in hand. This led investigators to visit Fucci's house to search for evidence. On May 10th, investigators searched Fucci's house, where bloody clothes were found in his room and in the bathroom sink. A knife with a fragment of the tip missing was found in a pond near Bailey's body, and the missing knife tip was later found during an autopsy embedded in the victim's scalp. They actually don't talk about that in the documentary. I did not know that. Fucci was arrested on charges of Tristyn Bailey's murder. He maintained his innocence at the time. On February 6, 2023, just before jury selection was about to begin, Fucci pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. On March 24th, Aiden Fucci was charged as an adult and was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years. He is currently serving his sentence at Cross City Correctional Institution. So he got 25 years to life, but the thing about it is, and his parents, her parents in there were just so unbelievable, the way that they just so calmly told the story. I just was so impressed with how they were able to share her story and really focus on who she was as a person. And they weren't super condemning. I think that that's always interesting. I always am interested to see how the family reacts to all this kind of stuff. And I mean, they really believe that the justice system worked, except for the mother says in 25 years we'll have to do this all over again. sadly enough. The story was so interesting. So it was about this girl named Tristyn Bailey. She's 13 years old. It had always been her dream to be like this huge cheerleader. She wanted to be like a cheerleader on Friday Night Lights, which she ended up being able to do. She was on these cheer teams, cheer squads. She ended up making like the middle school cheer team, and then she ended up getting picked as co-captain. And like cheerleading was her life. And she also was the youngest of 5 siblings. She had 4 older siblings. Her sister that is older than her and married is like, and they show wedding pictures of her and her wedding, was highly focused. And it's just, her telling the story, it's just so sad and tragic hearing her sister talk about it. So she goes missing. Like, so the brother and some of the other siblings are making the mom like a Mother's Day breakfast on Mother's Day. So it happens the night before. It happens early in the morning of Mother's Day. And so the mother's like waiting in her room. Stacey Bailey's waiting in her room for the kids to bring her up breakfast or that she can come down because they're like in the kitchen. So finally she comes down and she's like, I just can't wait anymore. So she tells her brother to go upstairs and get Tristyn. Her brother comes down and says Tristyn's not in her room, which is at like 9 o'clock in the morning. So at like 9 o'clock in the morning, they call the police. One of the things that was interesting to me about this is how quickly the police moved. I mean, within like a half an hour, they show it in real time in the documentary. Within like a half an hour, they already had like social media was out. The police were at the house. You know, sadly, when you watch or you follow or you read a lot, I also have a true crime book club that I run with my partner, Mel. Hey, Mel, how are you? When you read a lot of true crime about children that go missing, especially children from marginalized communities, there's not this kind of quickness with it, which is really sad. I also believe that every child deserves this attention, and I'm glad that Tristyn Bailey got it. Sadly, it wasn't soon enough because she was already gone at this point. But they show it in real time, and it's really actually interesting to see this because most of these true crime cases take days, if not weeks, if not months to solve. This one, literally, they solve it within, I think it's like 24 to 48 hours. And so the police come out there, they start interviewing people, canvassing people. Her sister says that she got a FaceTime call from this guy late at night, but then she thought she went upstairs to go to sleep. They find out that she went over to this guy Trey's house, who is found innocent in this whole situation, and that their friend Aiden came over there. And so then Trey goes to bed at like 1 o'clock and says, you guys need to leave. So nobody from the family even knows that Tristyn's out of the house. There's this whole thing that happens, this like deflection thing that happens with people. So many people are feeding them information. The parents and the police don't know what to believe, what's true and what's not true. There's this whole situation that happens with this guy getting involved, whose name is Carlo. I think he's like 19 or something like that, and he's like a drug dealer. And they're like, he deals to a lot of the girls, and so they're investigating him, even though the family's like, you know, she never did drugs, she wasn't that person. But I think like in any situation like that, you never know. So you have to like, you know, go into every option and things like that. And so they like interview him, they completely clear him and all this kind of stuff because of the car he was driving at the time and all this. But anyway, so they end up finding these 2 guys, and Aiden says that he and Bailey walked home, and that at this one street, she went her way and he went another way. Well, when they get, so then they bring the 2 guys into the police car, and they're like going around. And at this point, social media, we're talking, I mean, this was 2 years ago. We're talking about 3 years ago. We're talking that like, you know, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, they talk heavily about Snapchat in the show, is like really, really prominent. And so they are, you know, like everybody's talking about it online. Apparently got a lot of online presence. They say that it helped, but the dad is kind of like, yeah, like we're grateful for that. I mean, the parents were so decent in how they handled this whole situation. They were like, the dad was like, yeah, social media really helped, but we kind of wish that it hadn't because we were getting so many false leads that weren't really helpful whatsoever. So the police have these 2 guys in the car, and they start, like, as the police get out of the police car, because they're supposed to drive them around and show them the route that Aiden and Tristyn walked home, they start taking these, like, Snapchats of them being in the car, these 2 guys. They're, like, Snapchatting themselves being in the car and being like, yeah, we're in the police cars. And they're like, they are not taking it seriously whatsoever. And the police figure that out. So then they find this footage, okay, like in the neighborhood of, they see, like, a male and a female figure, but they can't identify them, walking down the street. And it's by Aiden's house. And then about 2 hours later, they see a male figure, and the figure at that time has on these like bright white shoes. And then the male figure runs back about 2 hours later, and he's carrying these shoes. So they end up taking Trey and Aiden in for questioning. Aiden is like, his parents come in, and this was so interesting to me. His mom comes into the room. The fact that, I don't know, you know, the fact that I understand a mother's love for her child, but you also have parents that have just like their daughter was murdered. The mother basically covers up the whole thing. The mother comes in the room, and the mother of Aiden Fucci, and she says to him, like, it's being recorded. They know it's being recorded. And she says, you were wearing khakis last night, not jeans, right? And he goes, I was wearing jeans. She goes, no, you were wearing khakis when you left. And then she, like, mouths to him something like there were just blood stains. Like, she says blood or something like that. Well, then they find out later they have, like, cameras inside their house, and they show her, like, after he was, like, taken in for questioning, she goes and pulls the jeans out of the laundry basket, scrubs them off, and puts them to take the blood off of it, and puts them back in the laundry basket. So she ends up actually getting arrested for interfering, and she gets, I believe she got 30 days in jail for that, which was kind of a light sentence if you really want to think about it. I mean, he could have got off because of her interference in the case and the investigation, and also obstructing justice. I mean, like, I don't know. It just, for me, it was crazy that she only got like 30 days. I think that's what she got, 30 days. But anyway, so they show him, and then finally, when they go over there and they get the jeans and they get the shoes, it has blood stains, and then the blood matches the DNA of Tristyn Bailey, and so they arrest him. The case is so sad. I mean, it's just, I mean, I was watching it. She was just such a sweet, darling girl, and like all of her dreams that she wanted to be like this cheerleader, you know, and you can, like, as you're watching it, and like her friends are older now, her siblings are older, and I mean, it's been, you know, 2 or 3 years, but still, I mean, you can see that, like, to think that this, you know, girl is like, would be in high school, and she'd be like accomplishing her dreams and living her life out. And she never got to do that, you know, she never got to go to prom, she never, you know, got to, like, apply for college, she never got to do any of these things. And what it basically barrels down to is that this guy, this Aiden Fucci, was so homicidal. And they don't really talk about a lot of mental health stuff on there, but they do talk about how, like, I think it's his girlfriend or either Trey's girlfriend says that he would tell her, like, I'm going to kill you. Like, and she says it was just a matter of time before somebody was killed. And that he said it's coming soon, but I am going to kill somebody. So there were people around him that did know that he was homicidal, which is really, really scary. The parents at the end, the one thing the dad says is, if anybody, I think it's the dad, maybe it's the mom, I don't know. They say that if you ever hear anybody, like, they're basically speaking to younger people. If you ever hear anybody that says something like this, please report it to an authority. You know, I think we live in such a muted world right now that, like, people throw this stuff out and they just kind of say this stuff all the time, and it's like nobody takes it seriously. But this case oddly reminded me of a book that I read years and years and years ago by Aphrodite Jones. The case has been covered on the Dr. Phil show. It's been covered, like, I think the women now, they're my age, are out of prison, but it was the murder of Shanda Shear that took place in Madison, Indiana. One of the reasons why I was interested in this case is because I'm from Indiana. The Shanda Shear case took place in Madison, Indiana, which is south of me. I'm in Indianapolis. And it was 4 girls that murdered this. I think she was 12 at the time. I think Shanda was 12 at the time. But 2 of them didn't want to be involved in it. The other 2 were the ones that were at the forefront of it. But the other 2 knew, and they didn't stop it, which is why they went to prison too, and they were kind of like part of covering it up and things like that. You know, I think we live in this world. It's like, I go to a lot of music festivals. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I go to a lot of music festivals, and, like, you know, what you hear a lot at music festivals is if you see something, say something. And I think that we live in this world where people see something, they hear something, they don't say something. And I think that it's why a lot of, you know, the murders and crime still exist in our country today, and it's really, really sad. And I think that had they known that this person was like that, you know, that possibly it could have been stopped and a life could have been saved. And that's a huge thing, you know? It's a huge thing. So I wanted to come over here and I wanted to share it. If you're not interested in the rest of the football thing, I would say to watch this. If you're interested in this case or anything like that, I would say to watch this one show. What was Monster Among Trolls is what it's called. It's episode 3 of season 4 of Murder Under the Friday Night Lights. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.